My name is Stephanie, and I'm going to talk to you about my big toe. That's right, my big toe. And here's a picture of my big toe. What happened is that sometime, I don't know, in the last year, I damaged my toenail. And I guess I didn't realize it, that it was that damaged. But as time went by, it began to grow up, of course, and I would clip it off at the top. And only, I don't know, a few weeks ago or a month ago, I noticed that there was a new toenail growing out under it. And one side of the upper toenail had actually come out. So it's floppy like this. The other side is still attached. The toenail's still working on growing up on that side. And I went, wow, this is very interesting that underneath my damaged toenail, a new one is growing. And when it's ready, the old toenail will fall off, sort of like a snake outgrowing its skin. There's something growing and it discards the outer skin, and all the time there's something growing underneath it. And this helped me a lot to understand this journey. And the journey, as I see it, is that in society today, or in humanity, you might say, there is something growing under the toenail, you might say. There is a version of humanity, a new version of humanity, a healthy version of humanity that is growing and evolving under the rotten toenail. But the rotten toenail is protecting it until it's ready to be exposed to view, you might say. So this has a lot to do with what I was told to do a while ago. I have explained that I have been in telepathic connection with those heaven side for nearly 9 years, day to day. And I continue to have those conversations daily. Anytime I have a question, I can ask. They provide me all kinds of information. We have written books, da 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 da. And all of this has been going on under the cover. And very few people are really aware of this. It's all going on under the cover of the rotten toenail, the toenail that got damaged, you see, and it needs to be shed so the new toenail can come to view. And so, what is this about? Well, in the course of these discussions, I went through many, many episodes and issues and chapters with my friends Heaven Side as we're working things out, learning how they see it, learning how I see it, learning how to integrate it, and eventually just having conversations with God, the Father. So, God the Father is also God energy that flows through everything. It's all about the Trinity. I won't go into it all here. And if you don't want to talk to God the Father, that's up to you. Although most people do when they get in a foxhole. As they say, there's no atheists in foxholes. And so when you find yourself painted into a corner up against the wall, you have a tendency to call out to God and say, save me, save me, save me, help, 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 help. And then as soon as things are going good, you're like, I don't need you. Who are you? And so this is a tendency of humanity. And I'm not going to say of human nature. I'm going to say it's a tendency of a big mistake that was made a long time ago in human consciousness and has been passed on from generation to generation to generation. And it's perpetuated by the pastor who tells you what God would tell you. And so he is the master magician. You see, the pastor is the master magician who talks for God, right? And so if you pulled aside the curtain, you would just see this little man pulling levers and trying to control the voice of God. And so the whole idea is that you listen to me, the pastor, and not listen to God. And so it puts the fear of God into people, of anyone who's listening to God, because the trick is that they pretend that's the devil, so that you will listen to the pastor. And the pastor will have control over you and try to have control over his reality, which is impossible, of course, because ultimately you have to receive what you give. If you try to control people, you will be controlled, on and on. And that is the nature of reincarnation, that it gives you plenty of opportunity to reap what you sow. The story really came into focus. You might say a little over a year ago, when someone from Heavenside said to me, Stephanie, the train has gone off the track. We are facing climate disaster. The train is crashing through the brush now. You can't stop it until it is stopped naturally in its pursuit through the underbrush. And I said, well, I've always known about climate change, overpopulation, etc., since I was in college many, many years ago. We're talking the early 1970s, 1969, 1970, 1971. And I just got, you kind of put it under the cover as you go through your life, taking care of all your issues, trying to survive in the world as it is. Until one day you get that wake up call, as I did. And I went to the internet because I always research everything I'm told. I always want to know what the physical component of it is, and if it matches up with what I've been told from heaven's side. And this is my system of validation, cross-validation, etc. This is how the new toenail is growing. And when I looked online, I was amazed because that very day, there were scientists going, oh my God, we're off the track. We're off the track. The train has gone off the track. We're crashing through the brush. Doomsday, doomsday. And I said, well, that's very interesting. And so I've been paying attention to it ever since. And they have been describing to me, God described to me actually, because I now talk a lot with God the Father, although I have talked with other aspects of those heaven side. And what I have been told is that there was a particular location where I was to go and start an eco village. And he described it. And I didn't know about it because it wasn't actually available for public view at the time. It wasn't, I assumed it was some other place nearby that was similar. But this summer, not so long ago, I saw it because it became available to me on the internet as it was put up for sale. And I said, that's what you're talking about. That's what you're talking about. And so it was always there. It just hadn't come into view yet. And so that was a very big validation of what I had been told a year before. And I said, well, I'm really online with all of this because it makes sense to me that there has to be a new community of people, the new toenail that is growing up under the old toenail that is falling off. In other words, humanity are pretty clueless in the main about the necessity to acknowledge climate change. And that's okay, because that's the way they play. That's part of being the old toenail that is about to fall off. It's just the societal way of being. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, not having been that toenail that protected your toe for so long. However, it cannot continue the same because it has been damaged. The world has been damaged. This trust on listening to the pastor and not to God has eventually run its course, and humanity finds itself facing something very dire. And when I say listening to the pastor, it could be listening to the teacher, listening to that professor who tells you what to think and doesn't allow you to think for yourself. If you disagree with them, or you can't, or you question what they say, you're just an outlier. You've gone beyond the pale. And the pale, of course, is the protective perimeter of the city, and it is the protective perimeter of the eagle. If you go beyond the pale, you have gone beyond the control of the eagle. Very simple. Now, the point of what I'm saying is that now, as we are suddenly finding things coming into focus, clear focus, it has been described to me from heaven's side, from God energy and God the Father, because they're a duality. Everything is a duality, or there would be no experience, would not be possible, and they combine in the Trinity. As you might say, the Trinity is the container that holds it all together. It is the force that holds right and left together, up and down together. And so humanity has painted itself into a corner. Now, I'm familiar with this because I have painted myself into a corner at times in my life. And one time in particular stands out to me. And I said, what am I going to do? I'm painted into a corner. I can't go on. There's no way I can go on. What can I do? What can I do? I have no options. What can I do? And then I lay there thinking I have no options. And I looked up and I said, wait a minute. There is an option when you paint yourself in the corner. You can go up. And I reached up and hands reached down for me. And that then was a very, very different experience in my life that changed my life. There have been many changes, many chapters in my life, but that was an important one of them. And I found myself that there was another floor to the building, that another floor had been there all the time or been constructed. It doesn't matter. Just like the toenail growing under the old toenail, the new toenail. It's there. It's another floor. And you can get on that floor and you can be safe from the rising water or whatever you want to, whatever term you want to use to describe the impending destructive energy or the current destructive energy, because it's ongoing, that is going to sweep away all those on the first floor and completely rearrange it. And so you go to the second floor. So what does it mean to look up? It means to come back to the Trinity, to come back to God energy, come back to the source, to leave behind the words of the pastor or of your teacher and think for yourself and look around you and find your own reality and not depend upon the programmed reality that has been fed to you. I'm not talking here about aliens that are trying to control you little blue men running around, or I'm not talking about cabals or any of that. I'm talking about the pastor in your local church. I'm talking about the elementary teacher. I'm talking about the parents who instruct their children. I'm talking about a mass consciousness that has grown up over many, many centuries, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And every year, every child that comes into that particular mass consciousness is educated to live within it. And it is very, very difficult to escape it. If this is the way you're taught that things have to be, and if you don't do it the way they tell you to, then you won't be accepted, you won't be loved, which of course everyone wants to understand love and to find love. That is the desire of humanity, to come home to love. And so they're always looking for it, but they get very, very confused because they are confused from the get-go by their pastor, their parents, their relatives, their friends out on the street, their cohorts, their teachers, everyone in society that has not looked up and said, well, there's a new toenail growing under the old toenail, and I'm part of it. I am part of the new toenail, not the old toenail, because this is the change that's coming to humanity. It is both an individual change and a change in human. So it is represented on many levels. It was represented on the level of the toenail that is growing under the old toenail, of the world that is reshaping itself under the old world that is being destroyed as we speak, only to give way to a new world. It's like a forest fire coming through, and the new growth now has a chance to begin. And so the new growth has a chance to begin because the earth is on fire. The house is on fire, and it's okay if you're sitting in front of the TV and you hear the fire alarm going off and you say, honey, would you shut that off? You know, it doesn't mean anything. It's okay. It's okay. If you trust on the rapture that you'll be pulled out of your house and taken up to heaven because your pastor told you so, it's okay. It's okay. That's the way you play. In eternity, there is nowhere to fall between the cracks. However, the story continues and a new chapter has begun. And that is where I am at. I am with those who are trusting on a new chapter in the form of a new community that will arise in an isolated location that will live in peace and harmony. And all the people in this community will not listen to the pastor tell them what to do or the teacher tell them what to do, because they will already know their music. They will know their song because they will feel it in their hearts. And God is the conductor of the symphony. So if you play your music, that's all you have to do. And if your music is not the right music to play in this symphony, then you will have to go somewhere else and play it. However, those people who can play the music of the heart will come together in the great symphony that is directed by God. This is the evolution of humanity. It is the nature of community that not everybody plays the same part, but they all work together in harmony, in peace and harmony, just as the cells of the body are not jealous of each other. The heart cell doesn't say, I'd really rather be down there in the big toe. And the big toe doesn't say, I'll change places with you because I'd always wanted to be a heart cell. And then they come there and they find out the heart doesn't work so well because the toe cell has a different function. And the, bowel cell doesn't say, God, I hate this job. I hate this job. I hate this job. I got to get out of here and do a different job, because they all trust that they have a function to play in the human being, in the human form, in the body, and therefore become the body of Christ. The body of Christ is the totality of all those who are playing together in the symphony. It is the totality of those who have come to see that they are a part of the same reality. And therefore, they have to play their song. And if they refuse to play their song, they refuse to play the music in front of them that comes through the heart, then they don't belong in the symphony. That's all. That's all. They can go play their part somewhere else and leave out the parts they don't like. They can play the song and say, well, I can't play this part because, my parents or my pastor told me that this part is not okay, so I can't play that part. This destroys the symphony. So right now, that's where I'm at. I'm ready to get to the hard work because I like hard work, actually. And I like being creative and creating something with other people. And that's where I'm at. And if you think this is where you might like to be at, please contact me. I'll leave my email below and we can talk about it, because there's a lot of work to be done, but it has to be done by the people who know the way to the heart and can show the way and can say, I got painted in a corner and I didn't know which way to go. And I looked up and I said, wow, maybe the only way out is up. And then hands reached down to pull me up. So I am the hands reaching down for those who are looking up and saying, maybe the only way out is up. Maybe there's nothing, no way for me here anymore. Maybe everything in my life is falling apart because it needs to fall apart. So I can finally think to look up. So I can trust that there is a new toenail growing under the old toenail, that there is constantly a new body being born to replace the old body, that there are cells of the body that work together in peace and harmony, so that when I take a step, they all do the same thing. They all say, hey, let's take a step today, guys. The big toe doesn't say, hey, I'm going to go the other way. Maybe occasionally it does, and it gets stubbed, and then the toenail falls off. So it learns a lesson. I don't know. But that is the story today. Thank you for listening, and have a happy day.